Today on Sekulow, Vladimir Putin's harsh response to President Biden threatening him with personal sanctions. And in Supreme Court news, more possible replacements for Justice Stephen Breyer have been revealed.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
So the second half hour of the broadcast, we'll get back into some Supreme Court discussion and go through some of these names you're seeing on television and get into a little bit more detail on those. But we want to start off on the Ukraine and Russia situation because you've got a lot of back and forth right now between Russia and Ukraine in writing, actually. And Russia has said, as we told you in the show, that sanctions from the U.S. would be, quote, destructive to the U.S. So sanctions on Russia by the United States would be, quote, destructive to the U.S. Now, you may ask yourself, how? And that is a serious question. But there is one area, oil and natural gas, which has gone up significantly in the last fiscal year, our reliance on Russian oil and natural gas. So there is a way for Russia to put some punishment on the U.S.
Well, what's interesting about all of this is, and I think we have to be really crystal clear on this, the fact of the matter is that I saw a oil and gas expert company saying because of the lack of pipeline, in fact, the Biden administration closing down pipelines, it's harder to get the gas to these various areas that need the gas. So what happens? Well, you're relying on who? Russia. I mean, this is the great dilemma. And I want to sit back for a moment and have everybody understand the fact that what we're saying right now, and listen to this, we are responding in writing to questions from Russia. Now think about this for a moment. We are the United States of America, and we are responding in writing to questions from Russia as if they're interrogatories or requests for production of documents or, Bob Mueller demanding, to interview the president, and what all we're agreeing to do is, give written responses to questions that we think are appropriate, which was not much of what they asked. But the United States of America is in the process, or has now delivered, Andy, written responses to the Russian government? And that doesn't look like strong leadership.
No, as a matter of fact, it's demeaning to the United States when we respond in writing to a demand by the Russian, or I should say, the nascent and coming back Soviet Union or Tsarist empire, as you may characterize it, but demeaning to us as a most powerful nation in the world, a nation committed to democratic rule, to human rights, responding to a totalitarian regime. And yes, it still is a totalitarian regime in Russia, in writing, as if we're school children being taught a lesson, and we have to respond in writing so the teacher can look at what we wrote and see if it's something that's agreeable.
Here's the problem. I mean, just think what Andy just said, just what I said. We're the United States of America, and and by the way, we're doing the same things with China now. They've got 3 things they'd like responded to. I mean, this is where our leadership has gone, that we're in the position now in the United States of America where we're responding in writing to these entities as if this is something normal.
Well, I think we are not the same United States of America. In fact, China, I know we're talking about Russia and Ukraine, but China has also said that things have gotten much better under the Biden administration when it comes to much more, quote, they've sent more positive signals than those received under President Trump. And then what does China do? A list of demands. The U.S. should stop interfering in the Beijing Winter Olympics, stop playing fire on the Taiwan issue, and stop creating various, I love this one, anti-China cliques to contain China. So the U.S. is receiving demands from Russia, from China. We're not issuing the demands. We're receiving demands, and we're waiting for responses. Give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. How weak do we look as a country right now? I mean, we have to look
answering written questions.
We have to look very weak because these actors wouldn't be taking the actions that they are. And they think they can make some money off this, maybe make some deals that are positive for them. Give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. Later on the broadcast, too, we're going to be joined by Congressman Mike Waltz, the first Green Beret elected to the U.S. House.
we see something, when we hear something, when we're concerned about an issue, we don't just talk about it. We do something about it. And that goes to our Government Accountability Project.
The things that are important are knowing where to look and who to look at. What we're trying to do is get information that we, the people, are entitled to. We sort of call them puzzle pieces because we don't know which ones we're going to need in the long run. But you gather all the puzzle pieces together, and then you start to put them together to uncover the truth, really.
The Freedom of Information Act, that's a statute that allows us to get information from the government. Starts with a letter from our offices in Washington to these agencies. And it says, give us this information on these topics. And generally, they don't. And then we go to court.
We go through a series of lengthy negotiations back and forth about what they'll give or what they won't give. We may get tons of information that's redacted, and we have to then go back and say, you redacted too much. We can't really find out what you're giving us because it makes no sense. So it goes through a process of litigation.
That is how you get information, and that office is going to be more active now more than ever.
The ACLJ has been extremely active in vigorously seeking to hold these bureaucrats accountable. We have filed hundreds of FOIA requests. We have received over 20,000 pages of documents in our litigation.
How was our government operating? What were they driving at? What was their agenda? What was their motive? And I will tell you, I mean, sometimes the picture that it paints is one of terrific abuse.
You're finding a nugget in a gold mine. Occasionally you'll come up with something that is really a bombshell, but you have to persist in doing it, and that's what we do.
That's a little bit of what we do through our Office of Government Accountability, and of course that comes under our Office of Government Affairs. So your support of the ACLJ supports all of that.
Just to set the stage for you, and we are going to get into the Supreme Court. We're not ignoring that. We talked about it yesterday on the broadcast pretty thoroughly, but now we've got some more names, and we've done research already on those names, so we can provide you a little bit more information about the likely candidates' picks for President Biden and the Supreme Court. So we're going to get to that in the second half hour. Don't miss that. But coming up in the next segment, we're going to be joined live by Congressman Mike Waltz. He is the first Green Beret to be elected to Congress, so he's got military service, very direct, and he's still in the National Guard. He's going to be talking about Ukraine and Russia, too, about what needs to be done now, not after the Biden-predicted massive World War II-style invasion of Ukraine. So not what we do after that, but what we should be doing now. And the White House, Dad, they have been they've pushed back on anyone, any reporter even, who has said, you talk about all these tough things you can do. Why would you not start that today to try and show how tough these sanctions will be? And I think the reason why they push back is because they actually don't have what we'd call like a sanctions regime set up.
They don't have a sanctions regime set up. They don't have Europe with them on this.
You got to have more than just the U.S.
It can't be just the United States. Germany clearly not with us on this, so that's clear. You have the Russian government already saying that the answers are not going to be adequate, and I still am in shock that we're in this position where the Russian government is demanding written responses from the United States, like I said, as if it's an interrogatory. And you see, and then Joe Biden talks about personally sanctioning Vladimir Putin. Listen to this.
See yourself personally sanctioning him if he did invade Ukraine?
Yes,
You would?
I would see that.
I mean, okay, first of all, and the Russians, of course, immediate response, so that's great. We don't have any assets in the United States, which I don't believe, but okay, let's assume it is. This is not a thought-out plan. So, Andy, we've studied Russia, and over many hundreds of years, and as I keep going back to the Israeli quote, power is how you deal with them. They're even saying that on CNN. You've got to project power. Why did we agree to respond to written questions as if this is some FBI investigation of the United States and we're going to give them written responses? It really is absurd, demeaning, actually.
Well, the reason is that we're a weak country, and we've become a weak country since the departure of President Trump from the presidency. And I'll say it unabashedly and unashamedly. We do not project power. We do not project authority. We do not project the image that President Trump presented. We have a pusillanimous, weak, feckless president who is engaging in a tete-a-tete with these Russians giving them answers on paper, and then they look at the answers and they say, well, they may be destructive, but they're not going to be painful and destructive, or you sanction me, and I'm not too happy with what you wrote. I may have to ask you to write it back to me again. What kind of stuff is this? Are we in kindergarten? Are we playing school here? Will we exchange papers across the aisle with the teacher to determine whether or not the teacher is going to be mad at us or not mad at us?
No, what they're going to say is, I'm sorry, the answers weren't acceptable. That's what the Russians are going to say. These answers aren't acceptable. Well, you've already invited us in to invade Ukraine, so what difference does it make? These answers aren't acceptable.
Yeah, and like their response is that this is the Kremlin spokesperson, and people might remember this name, Dmitry Peskov. He's got the mustache. Yeah. He said Russia's top leaders are not allowed under their own law from having foreign assets. Now, again, I don't agree. I don't believe that they have no foreign assets. But what it means, Dad, is that you've got to have a sanctions regime. Just saying they probably don't have a bunch of money, if you're Putin, stuck in a U.S. bank.
No, but they've got it.
But they have to use U.S. financial institutions to move their money around.
Caymans. You know where they're putting their money. It's these governments. I'm going to go to Fan Bennett, our Director of Government Affairs, because you would think there would be some bipartisan action on this. Of course, stone silence right now, although I do sense that even some of the Democrats stand are getting a little bit edgy on where this is going.
Well, the problem is it's gotten to this point, and it's much harder to engage it after the fact, as you've been pointing out. I mean, Jay, there were two bipartisan actions. The Senate voted 55-44 to enact sanctions a few weeks ago. The administration opposed that at the behest of Vladimir Putin. They also sent a bipartisan collection of senators over to meet with President Zelensky. So there's been some effort, but essentially, Jay, the reason that it hasn't coalesced is because the White House has really kept his party in line. That's how we've gotten to this point. And, look, to Vladimir Putin's point about how sanctions would be destructive but not painful, that's a red herring. I mean, look, every financial institution over the world has access to the SWIFT system, which the U.S. controls, and the vast majority of transactions across the world still take place and are conducted in the U.S. dollar. So that's really an excuse that does not have clout behind it. But, Jay, if the President of the United States and the executive branch just take it at face value, well, then it does have meaning because they don't act on it.
But we answered questions in writing as if we are what? The defendant in criminal litigation or in civil litigation? I mean, think about this for a moment, folks. We're the United States of America, and we're answering questions in writing. Vladimir Putin demands questions answered in writing. Joe Biden, let's give him answers. And we weren't so forthcoming, in those kind of negotiations and other cases we've handled. You negotiate that. But that's in litigation. This isn't litigation. This is diplomacy. And we're responding in writing. So we reject answer 2. We don't like answer 3. Answer 4 was okay because she told us you could let us invade a little bit. I mean, it's ridiculous. Let's take a phone call.
Yeah, Laura calling from Maryland online, too. If you want to talk to us on air, give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. This American weakness on display. And that gives me no happiness to say words like that. I like American strength. I like when the world is afraid of us. Hey, Laura, welcome to Sekulow. You're on the air.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
I love my country. I'm glad we still have our Peace Cross down in Bladensburg.
Yep.
But the reality is no one is happy with our president. Now we talk about all of these things that's happening. We do not have to respect China. They are cruel. They're evil, what they're doing with people in concentration camps. We do not have to respond in writing. What can the people do legally to stand up and get a better government? That's what I would like to know.
Laura, I appreciate your call. Let me tell you what you can do. It's election. We said this 100 times. I'm going to say it 100 more. Folks, we live in a constitutional republic. So you elect your office. The people elect the representatives, the congressmen, the senators, your legislators in your house, and the president of the United States. You don't elect judges.
And
those are appointed.
Get out and vote in massive ways.
Yeah, because the other side, listen, both sides are highly motivated. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yes, highly motivated.
Elections have consequences. You are watching the consequences. The United States of America is answering the Russians in writing.
Yeah, instead of having our president go on TV and demand, by the way, Russia, you do this is what happens, X, Y, and Z. We can't even say what would happen Because, again, when I say a sanctions regime, what I mean is that you've got these countries on board with you. So that Dmitry Peskov can't just say, if you want to just try to sanction me, we have no assets massively in the U.S. anyways. But I know where they do have assets moving through Europe, through Germany, through their pipeline. I mean, there are, but you've got to put that together. And Than, what I'm worried about generally is, like you said, in Washington, I know we're going to talk to Congressman Waltz, who's an expert on this because of his military experience, but is that so many in Washington have put forward so many ideas of what to do. And it's like the Biden administration's just got, they're just like holding their ears shut.
Well, it really comes back to a conversation that we've had with Rick on this broadcast many times, Jordan. When you send a diplomat over to another adversary or to another country just generally, Jordan, you have to give them diplomatic tools to use. What did we do? We sent Wendy Sherman and Jake Sullivan over, and we know that their approach is one where they don't want to use any tools. They don't want to use any pressure or any leverage. They just want to talk about things. Jordan, look, even tools that you aren't ultimately going to use, the other side needs to believe that everything, and I mean everything, is on the table. Now, that doesn't mean every option is one that is good to use, but they need to believe that American strength is on display and that the diplomats that we send over are there to negotiate from a posture of strength. Jordan, when you send someone like Wendy Sherman, who was the lead negotiator of the Iran deal, which they just openly flaunted, I mean, why would Vladimir Putin believe that she was coming over to deal in strength? He just doesn't believe it, Jordan.
I just want people to think for a moment. I want to just put yourself in the State Department, and you're in the room, or maybe over in the Oval Office, and the Secretary of State comes in, and the Deputy Secretary of State, and the head of the desk for Russia says, "Listen, Vladimir Putin has a series of questions he wants our answers to. Let's sit around the table and discuss answering questions in writing to the Russian government." I just want that to sink in for a moment. I mean, Andy, you only got a minute here. You're shaking your head. I mean, we're answering the Russians' questions in writing.
Yeah, Jay, the reason I'm shaking my head is that it reminds me of October 28, 1940, when the Italians put a demand of questions on the Greek Prime Minister John Metaxas and saying that Greece, we demand the following of you, and gave a list of questions to be answered and to be responded to, okay? Do you know what the Greek Prime Minister did? He took a bottle of ink and threw it on the piece of paper and said, "There's my response." And he uttered one Greek word, "ochi," which means no.
He's right.
All right, folks, we come back. Congressman Waltz from Florida's 6th Congressional District. He's been on the broadcast before. He is the first Green Beret elected to Congress. He still currently serves in the National Guard. He was, again, just on Fox this morning talking about what we could be doing. Be right back with Congressman Waltz.
In my time in service, both as the CI director and the Secretary of State, I watched the good work that the ACLJ was doing here in the States and all across the world.
The ACLJ's work at the UN, overseas with the European Court of Justice, is incredibly important.
We have on our team lawyers, non-lawyers as well, that are policy experts. They're all engaged in foreign policy issues.
We have been focused on protecting the nation state of Israel, particularly before the United Nations.
We don't shy away from the battles that are going on at the UN and just complain about them. We actually try to go in and do something positive and actually affect change.
The risk of an incomplete or unsolid relationship within the United States of America and Israel is real.
Israel is very important to the ACLJ, and we will always fight for Israel's rights.
We had a series of cases at the European Court of Human Rights, primarily dealing with religious liberty.
And as Secretary of State, I saw this too. Nations that had more religious freedom were on firmer footing. They had better democracies.
America has always been the world leader in religious liberties, in freedom of conscience and freedom of speech.
We've taken the First Amendment, and that has been our cornerstone. It's to defend the rights of people of faith and others that are having their rights abused.
We not only hold our government accountable, but we hold other governments accountable.
You have to keep the battle going when it's not cool anymore, when it's not the number one story on TV. You have to actually be committed to fighting it out, or else you'll never win.
The ACLJ's front and center on this, whether it is going after the deep state, whether it is litigation that we're engaged in. Your support of the ACLJ enables us to do all of this. Go to aclj.org today. That's aclj.org.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow, and we're going to take more of your calls, too, later in the broadcast, 1-800-684-3110. We're joined by a good friend of the ACLJ right now, Congressman Mike Waltz of Florida's 6th Congressional District. Congressman Waltz is the first Green Beret elected to the House of Representatives and also continues to serve in the National Guard. Congressman Waltz, thanks for being with us today on Sekulow.
Yeah, hey, good to be with you.
I saw you on Fox News this morning. I want to ask kind of a similar question, which is the American people have asked, I think, over and over, and they're not getting a sufficient answer from the Biden administration, which is the first question is, why should they be so concerned about Ukraine to the point where we're talking about troop deployments, potentially up to 50,000 in one article that was released, and why they should be, even on the surface level, why they should be concerned about what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, I think the two main reasons. Number one, in the wake of Afghanistan, authoritarianism is on the march around the world. And after letting terrorists dictate the terms and abandoning our fellow Americans and betraying our allies, Putin, Xi, North Korea, Iran, they all see an opportunity right now. And if we allow Putin to just walk over Ukraine with no consequences, I think that's going to have even further consequences down the road. So it's a slippery slope argument, and we can't behave like Neville Chamberlain did back in the 1930s. Right? First it was the Czech Republic, then it was Poland, then it was France, and pretty soon we had devolved into World War III. But the other piece is Putin fully intends to reestablish the old Soviet Union. And he sees an opportunity now with the weakness that he smells in the Biden White House to do that, and that is certainly not in our interest. Now, is it to the point where we should be putting American boots on the ground in Ukraine? No, I don't think so. But can we be doing a lot more to frustrate, slow down, and hopefully deter Putin? Absolutely. But Biden right now is basically sending strongly worded letters and making tough promises on what he'll do after the fact, rather than taking tough measures to deter Putin on the front end.
Congressman, this is Jay Sekulow. The thing that I am really concerned about, besides the overall situation, is the fact that the United States of America's diplomatic corps answered questions in writing propounded by the Russian government, as if we're in a civil or criminal case and we're answering depositions or interrogatories. And we're the United States of America, and we're answering the Russians in writing their questions? It seems to me to be preposterous.
Well, it is preposterous. And by the way, they just delivered that document to Congress, but they classified it. So why is it classified here in the United States when we put it in the hands of the Russians? And
tomorrow morning or tonight, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And they'll spin it for their own propaganda. Yet we can't reply because they classified it on there. And so once again, we're giving our adversaries more latitude than our fellow Americans. But you're right. I mean, I am far more concerned about what Biden is conceding. We saw this playbook under Obama when Putin invaded Crimea and Ukraine. We saw this playbook under Obama when every time the Iranians got tough, the White House conceded more. And I really fear what they just put in that document. I hope to see it tomorrow.
Congressman, the other pushback we get a lot from the White House right now, any reporter that asks, why aren't we doing things now? Like, why if we talk about all these massive sanctions that can be crippling, why not start putting them into place to show the Russians that we can do that? And my concern is that because we've had a lack of cooperation in Europe and NATO, that maybe we don't have the ability to put those sanctions in place. I mean, that would be very concerning, but that it would just be unilateral from the U.S., and that might not be enough.
Look, I think you raise an absolutely great point. number one, we should be putting them in place now with a message to Putin, stand down your forces and de-escalate, and we'll lift these sanctions. But I think the bigger issue with the sanctions, whether we put them in place now or threaten to do later, is that the largest economy in Europe, Germany, isn't going to be on board. For sanctions to work, there has to be consensus, and they have to be in dollars and euros. And I do not see the Germans getting on board. Heck, they won't even agree to send any lethal aid right now to Ukraine or even allow their airspace to be used for it, much less put their own domestic population with a new German government in a difficult position in the middle of winter when they rely on Russia for 50% of their gas. But I also think, guys, there's an important point to make here in the context of the Green New Deal, Build Back Better, and this push to just dive into renewables. Germany has done that. California has done that. We've seen rolling blackouts in California. We've seen Germany now back away from nuclear, and it's only made them more reliant on the dirtiest form of gas in the world, which is Russian gas. It's just ridiculous. And now we're hearing that the administration is going to Qatar and asking them to be prepared to pump more gas to fill in for the void after they crack down on U.S. oil and gas companies. It's just idiotic.
Congressman, I want our audience to understand what's going on here. The United States is answering questions in writing propounded by the Russian government. The Chinese gave the United States a list of 3 priorities on Thursday that it has to be met. Those priorities have to be met for continued bilateral negotiations. At the same time, the Biden administration decides to shut down pipelines for natural gas in the United States of America when we were finally energy independent. And now we're going to Qatar and the UAE and these other Gulf state partners to get them to produce more so we don't end up just relying on who? Russia. So they have in 1 year, they have successfully put us in a horrible position politically and diplomatically, in my view, Congressman.
And militarily. Yes. And for your listeners, every time they see the price of gas going up, every time they see the price of a barrel of oil going up, it's going into the hands of Putin. That cash is going in the hands of the Iranian regime, and that is only going to embolden them. And it shouldn't surprise anyone. We see him massing on Ukraine and the Iranians through their terrorist proxies, launching missiles at Israel and our Gulf allies. And this is all because of Biden's weakness, lack of judgment, incompetence. And by the way, we haven't even mentioned that we have a Taliban terrorist superstate that fully intends to strike the United States again, all in the space of a year.
And Congress, this is my final question to you. And thank you for your continued service to our country, both in Congress and the military. But let me just say this. Every president faces lots of tough issues. We didn't have to be here. I mean, we did not. The U.S. did not have to be in this position, whether it's Afghanistan, Russia, China. This is not the posture we had to be in.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. These are self-inflicted wounds. Bad policy decisions, but guys, it's not going to turn around. I don't know how we make it through another 3 years, but the same team around Biden was around Obama that thought the Iran deal was a good thing. The Bergdahl trade was a good thing. Benghazi, Crimea, South China Sea. I mean, the giveaway to Cuba.
Yeah.
The hits will keep on coming.
Congressman, we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. Appreciate your service to the country, both as Jordan said in Congress and also in our military. Thanks for standing with our country. And we'll get through this. We're the greatest country in the world, but we've got some real challenges, folks. Real serious challenges. Thank you, Congressman.
All right, folks, we've got a lot to talk about, too. Coming up, second half hour, we're going to get more into Supreme Court news as well, but we'll continue to talk about the Ukraine-Russia issue. If you've got questions and comments after you heard Congressman Waltz, give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. This is a great time to do it. So when we're back from the break, we can get you on the air, 1-800-684-3110.
Because of your support, because of the support of every member of the ACLJ, one of the practice areas that we've been able to develop is Freedom of Information Act requests, or FOIA requests.
It's thousands of pages of paper, and in those thousands of pages of paper, you usually find a nugget.
Government agencies acting out of control.
We have exposed that in our FOIA litigation, and we do that every day that we bring these cases.
It is your statutory right as an American citizen to have access to documents that reveal all how the government is functioning, how your government is functioning.
We took it to the IRS. No one ever does that.
What the IRS was doing was violating the Constitution and statutory law. They can't do what they were doing before.
They've been hiding behind in the shadows. These FOIAs bring them to light.
How do we know? Because our FOIA litigation got that document.
Those of you that support the ACLJ, this is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Think we haven't been on this, folks? We've been on it.
Keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are going to continue to take your calls both on the U.S. Supreme Court as we shifted to more discussion there, but also on if you've got calls about Russia, Ukraine, and what we were just talking about with Congressman Waltz. It's always great to have him on and his perspective because, again, he comes from the top special forces of the United States, the Green Berets, into Congress. He's in the battles that we're talking about right now, he fought in and continues to as a member of the National Guard. So we'll take your calls at 1-800-684-3110, but also on the U.S. Supreme Court that we just received. There should be an event that the news covers at any moment. Is it on right now? Not yet. Almost. But we did get the letter that was delivered to the White House from Justice Breyer, dated today, though we heard that the White House was informed about this about a week ago, informing them of how he will resign, but also continue to serve on the circuit courts, which they're allowed to do.
Yeah, they can that. So the letter says, I'm writing to tell you that I've decided to retire from regular active judicial service as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States and to serve under the provisions of 28 U.S.C. 371B, which allows him to serve on the circuit courts, which he did previously. I intend this decision to take effect when the court rises for the summer recess this year, typically late June or early July, assuming that my successor has been nominated and confirmed. In other words, if not nominated and confirmed, he's staying on. There will be a 9-member court come the first Monday in October when the court goes back in session. Now, what's interesting, I want to go to Fan Bennett on this right away, and we're already getting the sense of who the nominees are. Or potential nominees. I mean, there's a little bit of guessing going on, but it's been pretty clear. But Than, I wanted to get your sense of what the Republican reaction is, because one of the nominees was just confirmed to, guess what, Merrick Garland's seat when he became the Attorney General of the United States. Judge Jackson was put on the D.C. Court of Appeals and just confirmed.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that she's probably the front runner, Jay. It's Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, sits in Merrick Garland's seat on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals.
Clerk for Justice
right,
Breyer.
that's exactly right. A former clerk for Breyer. There are a lot of political reasons, Jay, that she would be a natural fit. She also got 3 votes from Republican senators in last June, so she got 53 votes to confirm for her current seat. I think she probably makes a lot of sense. I think that she is the one that she thinks is the front runner. Jay, I did review some of the hearing, though, for several of these judges that are on the so-called reported shortlist this morning. And another judge that I think is going to get some consideration is a judge that's sitting on the 7th Circuit, Judge Candace Jackson Akumi. Jay, she's very personally impressive. I've heard she dealt very favorably with the White House during her previous confirmation fight. So I think, Jay, that those are probably the 2 front runners at this point.
You said an interesting term, fight. Now, we have seen Supreme Court justice confirmation fights. And I think about what Justice Kavanaugh went through in that horrible display, what Justice Thomas went through back, 30 years ago. Justice Barrett, where they accused her of the dogma of her religion lives deep within her. I don't anticipate that will happen here. But Than could prove me wrong. But go ahead.
No, I agree with you, Jay. I mean, the Republicans are very civil. I've even seen the hard questioning by Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, whom I respect greatly. But even though his questioning and his cross-examination, literally, of judicial nominees is very tough and very pointed, it's always done civilly. It's always done with respect for the office that the person holds or for the position that they're seeking to hold. And I don't see the Republicans engaging in that kind of street fighting that we saw so horribly begun with Clarence Thomas that you and I remember personally, and that was continued through Kavanaugh and continued through Justice Barrett.
But, I was thinking about this, Jordan. I wonder, they're not going to get the bounce from this that they anticipate.
I don't think so. We can talk about that when we come back. They're about to have Breyer.
We'll have some sound from it.
Biden coming together. But listen, the White House is hoping that you forget about everything else. Now, it may help with their base, but that's all going to depend on who they pick. And then once that pick, remember, we're going to scrutinize.
And Roe could be over with by then.
But the progressive liberals are going to scrutinize just as hard.
Yes.
And if it's not a pick that's exactly where it wants to be, I think it could backfire on them. Because just saying it's an African-American woman is not enough for the progressive left. And again, I think there's a lot to talk about there. We're going to get to when we come back from the break.
Justice Breyer's retirement, of course, now sets the stage for President Biden's promised nomination of the first African-American woman to the high court bench.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is certainly the favorite here.
A graduate of Harvard Law who was interviewed by President Obama for the high court in 2016. She's a former public defender and member of the U.S. Sentencing Commission.
She's a sitting judge on the D.C. Circuit, and in some ways she's a no-brainer pick for this vacancy. She was just confirmed with several Republican votes.
The other thing I throw into the mix about her, which I haven't heard too much of up till now, she's a Breyer clerk.
An interesting note from our Chad Pergram on Capitol Hill. That Brown Jackson is the sister-in-law of former House Speaker Paul Ryan.
Leandra Kruger on the California Supreme Court. She's someone else who's highly credentialed, who would be in the mix.
A rising liberal legal star at just 44 years old, a graduate of Yale and Harvard, and a former clerk to the late Justice John Paul Stevens.
She's a former Obama Justice Department member, argued 12 cases before the Supreme Court.
Has the advantage of, I think she's about 6 years or so younger than Judge Jackson.
Judge Michelle Childs, she's now on a district court, but she's been nominated recently to the D.C. Circuit, a very prominent stepping stone to the Supreme Court.
A Detroit-born former state labor department official, employment lawyer, and mother of two. Her law degree from the University of South Carolina, a public school, would add a new educational background to the high court. And Wisconsin-born Judge Leslie Abrams Gardner is also a top contender, a former assistant U.S. attorney, graduate of Yale and Brown, and the sister of voting rights advocate Stacey Abrams.
I hope he's replaced by somebody who is pragmatic, who is centrist, who is less than radical on either side. I think the same when the Republicans get to make nominations. They should nominate centrists, not radicals.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We're going to start taking your calls now, 1-800-684-3110.
I'd like to know how important this particular Supreme Court pick, replacing Justice Breyer, is to our audience.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, it's not a one that is going to shift the court immediately at all. Right. It might push the liberals on the court to be more liberal, but they'd still be in the minority when they're acting very liberal. So
I'd like to hear what they say. Yeah.
You know, and I think from my position here, is that unlike maybe some of these nominees in the past where you just say, obviously we're probably going to oppose the nominee, but it's going to be focused on philosophy, what they've actually said, what they've actually done. I will tell you, when you look at some of these are pretty new people on the court.
Yeah, you don't know.
So there's a lot less there when it comes to court. So then where do you go? You have to go to speeches, writings, and all of that becomes available for these nominees. Who they worked for. And again, you start putting together a judicial philosophy. But we got a lot of calls coming in on this. So 1-800-684-3110. I think you had, and again, a question we're asking you: how important is this to you when there's inflation, when there's Russia, Ukraine, when there's COVID, you're worried about your kids getting into school? Because the left thinks you're going to forget all about that and just say, "Oh, Joe Biden got to pick a Supreme Court justice. So, rah, everything's okay."
Yeah, and there's another aspect of this, and we'll take the calls in a moment, and that is it's likely that with the decision in the Dobbs case, that Roe versus Wade, if it in fact overturned, will take that issue off the table. The answer, if they ask about do you support Roe versus Wade, is going to be very academic if it's overturned, which has always been a big point of contention on both.
I think any of their nominees will.
Yeah, of course they will, but they're gonna say, but of course I'm bound by the court's decision until another one comes up before. But it's going to be a conservative court for a long time. Let's go ahead and take a call.
Yeah, Harry calling from Pennsylvania on line one. Hey, Harry, welcome to Sekulow. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. I was just wondering, Mr. Biden is being second in command during the Obama administration. Would he go with Merrick Garland as a nominee for the Supreme Court again?
Yeah.
It seems like Biden
Now, let me jump in, Harry. No, it's not going to happen. Number one, too old. Which is a big factor.
Has been not very popular.
Yep.
Two, let's take out the criteria that Biden set that it has to be an African-American woman. So he does not meet those standards. He's been
the progressive
left has been very upset with him on voting, on going after former Trump officials. The list goes on. I'm not saying again that I don't say I agree with him on that, but he's not popular. Let's put it that way. And I think a lot of the progressive left, though they're not happy that seat was ultimately taken by Republicans, are happy that he's not on the court.
But you know what's interesting here, and that is, so, I'll go to Andy on this first, and then we'll take some more calls at 800-684-3110. You look, traditionally when we get into a Supreme Court nominee at the end of the term, which means sometime the nomination will probably come forward in, April, I guess, in May, and they'll start having, they'll do the meet and go around the Congress, meet with members of the Senate, and then, maybe hearings in June, and then confirmed upon the conclusion of the court. You're expecting this big, titanic battle, because it's been Republicans it was Trump that got to put 3 justices on the Supreme Court. I just suspect here it's not going to be. I'm not saying that's right, by the way, and I don't think we should never stoop to their disgusting behavior and what they tried to do with Kavanaugh and the way they demeaned the religion of Amy Coney Barrett. I think that's deplorable, disgusting, and don't go down there. But scrutinize these opinions so you know what the judicial philosophy, at least you know what you're getting. I think, and we've already started that process. Andy?
Well, I think you're right, Jay. I think that's exactly what the Republican senators are going to do. They're going to be highly civil, highly respectful, and highly polite, because that's how they reacted to these. We're not going to see the bloodbath that we saw with Clarence Thomas, that we saw with Kavanaugh, which was a bloodbath, and which we almost saw with Justice Barrett in that horrible statement that Senator Feinstein made, questioning the depth of her moral dogma and her religion. We're not going to see that, but we are going to see tough questioning into these nominees and what their judicial philosophy is, because the Republicans know that there are, and I don't think there'll be any defections, quite frankly, there are the votes in the Senate to confirm Biden's nominee.
Which is what I was going to ask Stan. And Jordan. Politically, how does this play? And then we'll get another call. You want to take another call first?
Let's go to the call first. Bill in Wyoming on line 4. Hey, Bill.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I heard this thought mentioned yesterday, and I'd like to pose it to you as a question. Do you think maybe Sinema and Manchin might push back on their these nominees because of the way they were treated on their stance for the filibuster? I'll go ahead and hang up and listen to your answer.
I don't think so. I would caveat that, Stan, with because we know that a couple of these one of the top picks here has already gotten their vote and has gotten a vote of 3 Republicans. It would be to me, it would have to be some issue that arose, either policy issue that was just so out of line with where they were with their constituents. But I just, if it's one of the nominees that's at the top of the list, like Judge Jackson, she just went through confirmation. She got Manchin and Sinema's vote.
Yeah, it'd have to be one of two things, Jordan. It'd have to be a nominee that's out of left field, like you said, somebody that we aren't talking about right now that really bothers them on an ideological issue, or something that comes up during the nomination process that's very surprising. I just don't see any senator on the Democrat side that voted for a judge last year not voting for that same judge when they're elevated to the Supreme Court. Look, every vacancy is important, but the political atmospherics, where you're at in the cycle, what the makeup of the Senate is, what the makeup of the court is, all those things go into how contentious it is. And maybe the most important thing here, and Jordan, we have made this argument for several different nominations when the Senate had different majorities. The biggest factor here is what the American people said in the last election. In the last election, whether you like it or not, they gave the Senate control to Leader Schumer. So if he can rally his troops, they're going to be able to confirm the nominee.
Well, the one other thing I was going to ask you, Jordan, in that regard, and that is this. They'll put forward let's say it's one of the people on this list, and we'll say this is what their legal positions are. Do you think that there is the political oomph to really push back hard?
I think
it's a very difficult thing.
Yeah, I think that it will have to take an issue that arises that didn't arise before in a confirmation, or that just wasn't found because the research wasn't done as deeply, because it wasn't a Supreme Court nomination, that is something that is so out of line, Second Amendment, so out of line on where the American people are. I mean, it could be any issue that they've shown themselves to be an extreme actor of when it comes to philosophy. Now, I'm not talking about what their religious faith is. I'm talking about it's extreme. It would put them on the extreme spectrum of judicial philosophy. Now,
like somebody said, the right to the Second Amendment doesn't exist to individuals.
Right. And if they wrote that somewhere and said that somewhere, yeah, I think you could build some serious opposition.
Because Manchin and Sinema
would have to be. They'd be
Fester. Yep.
They'd be facing tremendous pressure from conservative groups like ours, to say, you know what, take a stand here. You can't say you're a supporter of the Second Amendment and then go forward with a lifetime of disappointment of someone who would like. That's the kind of issue I think it would take to build a groundswell of support. Of course, we're going to, through this process, we talk about the difference in judicial philosophy, difference in our judicial philosophy between probably anyone that definitely between anyone that President Biden will choose to pick. But ultimately, I think to derail a nomination, remember, Kavanaugh wasn't derailed.
No,
it was nasty, but
they didn't derail him.
Barrett, who they went after, not derailed. In fact, it was done one of the quickest confirmations in history.
But Andy, I'm thinking about it here, because if Roe's decided and if Roe's out, that takes a big contentious issue off the table. If the president nominates someone that has already been confirmed recently, like Jordan said, absent something just out of the box, the president nominates with the advice and consent of the Senate. The person's confirmed, and they have 50 votes in the Senate, plus the tiebreaker being the vice president.
Right. And I think Roe is going to be, well, we know Roe is going to be decided before the court rises. And that's always a question that is being asked by senators of nominees. It's going to be a non-issue. And unless the nominee stubs her toe, because it's going to be an African-American woman, as the president has promised, and she has been recently confirmed, and I'm talking about Judge Ketanji Jackson, who I think is going to be the nominee, then she's in.
Yeah. I mean, she just went through confirmation. Again, it would have to be, remember,
we try to be realistic here.
Circuit court nominees go through a certain level. Now, just because she just went through confirmation, yeah, it should make it easier, but that doesn't mean that same kind of digging has been done on speeches, on remarks, on if you made some remark on microphone at some conference about your view of the Second Amendment, I think those kind of issues where there's a constitutional right that's clear, and you have a far left view of that, then I think that's what you're looking for when you do this research. We're going to be doing that research at the ACLJ, and I think also another issue Biden has is that the progressives, I think, actually have probably more of a chance to sink any of these nominees than the right, because they've got a lot more power inside the Democrat Party, of course, than conservatives. They, I think, hold the most power in this nominating process. He's got to clear whoever this is through them, or else they could just cause serious trouble. Be right back on Sekulow. Taking your phone calls. Give us a call, 1-800-684-3110.
Thanks to your support of the ACLJ, we have had many victories.
The report is coming out. It shows that not only did Tea Party groups get more scrutiny, but so did a host of other conservative groups.
It was something that no one could believe our government was even capable of doing, and now they were admitting it.
It's one of the most significant wins in the ACLJ's history. To take on the IRS and win, for the ACLJ, life has always been a top issue.
Barbara, I am here at this site because there are thousands of people and millions across America that say abortion's murder.
When you're fighting for the life of the unborn, you're on the right side of history, you're on the right side of law.
These are young people in their 20s and 30s that are doing this, are fighting for life to beat back the abortion juggernaut.
It's very important that we remain hopeful that the courts that the Trump administration was able to impact will give us good rulings that are based in law and sound reasoning.
This is one of the social issues we're winning.
There are historians that point out that religious persecution is at its highest level since the first 3 centuries, when the Roman Empire led religious persecution.
A mid-state pastor's family is fighting to bring him home.
We are getting my husband after 7.5 months.
Turkey should not get away with holding my father one more day.
When Brunson was finally released, who meets him at the airport at 2:30 in the morning? Rick Grinnell.
I saw Pastor Brunson walk down the stairs of the plane. I was filled with emotion. I told him that we were praying for him. The American people never forgot about him.
I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and actually I'm astounded.
We need your help as we continue this work here in the United States and around the world.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls as well. I wanted to let you know, President Biden from his Twitter account just tweeted, the person I nominate to replace Justice Breyer will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, integrity. They did confirm this, and they will be the first black woman nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court. So any of those people who thought that maybe he's not 100% on that, it's 100% on that. He also said in the press conference, we have a time frame. It looks like let's play that for everybody.
I'll meet with the potential nominees, and it is my intention to announce my decision before the end of February. I have made no choice at this point.
So that's about it.
That puts that puts somebody out a long time before their confirmation.
It does, Jay. I mean, look, I don't think, I could be wrong on this, but I don't think Dick Durbin will call hearings until the court recesses for the summer. So that would mean hearings wouldn't begin until June.
Yeah.
So February to June, what's that, 4 months? That's a long time, Jay. I mean, they do have to make their rounds, but that's a long time for a record to be scrutinized.
Well, I was just thinking about that, Andy. We'll take a call in a minute, but that is in litigation life, that's in a trial, that's a lifetime.
It is a lifetime. 4 minutes in a trial is a lifetime sometimes. 4 hours is an eternity, but 4 months is a long time. That's why I think it's going to be someone who has already been considered by the Senate, approved and confirmed, and who's got that credential behind them. And that's why it's the candidate that I thought, and I probably still think that that's going to be who it is.
All right, let's go to the phones. Joe in Tennessee online too. Hey, Joe.
Hey, thanks, guys, for taking my call.
Sure.
My question is, it's been the opinion of many of us conservatives that Chief Justice Roberts leans to the left at times, and we know that this Biden appointee will make it through most likely. How do you think Biden's appointment will affect Chief Justice Roberts' attitude and the way he decides and how he leads the court?
I really don't think it's going to have a major impact, and in fact, it could have the exact opposite impact of what they'd want. If they're going to put in a very progressive way left of center justice to the Supreme Court of the United States, John Roberts is he's not a moderate. John Roberts is a conservative. He is a conservative in the mold of John Roberts. He's not Antonin Scalia. He's not Alito and Thomas. He's John Roberts. More times than not, he is conservative in his rulings. Not always, but more times than not. Having said that, they've got to be careful. I mean, they're still the last president selected 3 Supreme Court nominees and got them confirmed. This is pretty much the Supreme Court. I mean, look at the ages now of most of the justices. So, you've got justices in their 60s, and you got one justice in their 60s, a couple in their early 70s. Everybody else is in their 50s, late 40s, 50s. So these justices are around for a long time. When this court can get close again on an ideological or judicial philosophy's point of left-right, would be if there was a retirement of 2 of the conservative justices or illness or something like that, which you don't wish on any of them. And so that's the only time that you really see this in play. I don't think it impacts John Roberts in that regard. I really don't.
All right, folks, again, we're going to continue to take phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684.
Amy Farrell's only 49 now. She's been on the court. I mean, she's just 49.
So, yeah, these are, again, big decisions to make. There is a whole group, and we talked about Judge Jackson, but there are others. I mean, and President Biden said he hasn't made a decision yet. I think Judge Jackson is that leading pick, but you can be surprised in this process. Leandra Kruger, she's on the California Supreme Court. We talked about her yesterday. She also clerked for Justice Breyer. Turned down some federal appointments, including Solicitor General, so may have wanted to stay in California. Interesting thing about her, had no California legal experience.
No.
And got appointed to the California Supreme Court.
Right.
It shows you, again, there's a lot of leeway on these, when we talk about those nominations, that you don't have to be a specific type of lawyer or have judicial experience.
You don't have to be a lawyer.
Right.
Listen to Joe Biden at the Justice Breyer presser just a few moments ago. Take a listen, number 55.
But let me say a few words about the critically important work of selecting his successor. Choosing someone to sit in the Supreme Court, I believe, is one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has. Our process is going to be rigorous. I will select a nominee worthy of Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence and decency. While I've been studying candidates' backgrounds and writings, I've made no decision except one. The person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court.
So there you have it. He laid out the president laid out his criteria, which constitutionally he has the authority, Andy, to do under the Constitution. He makes the select.
He absolutely does. The president makes the decision. The president makes the nomination with the advice and consent of the Senate. There's no filibuster. It's a majority vote. It's very simple. And he has the right to do it, just as President Trump had the right to nominate the 3 nominees he nominated, and they got confirmed. President Biden is going to have the same privilege, and there's no question about it.
Van, there was an article in Time Magazine yesterday saying how the Republicans could somehow block this nominee through some parliamentary moves. I read it. I was not persuaded. What's your sense?
Yeah, I'm not persuaded either, Jay. There was an agreement between Leader Schumer and Leader McConnell on how they were going to conduct power sharing in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And essentially what that article argued is underneath that power sharing agreement, if the committee is deadlocked, that the nominee would be kicked to the Senate floor and they would require a cloture vote at a 60-vote threshold. But, Jay, I mean, we know this. The only thing it takes to lower a cloture threshold is 50 votes of the United States Senate. And now that has already been the threshold for 3 Republican nominees to the Supreme Court, I just don't think there's any way in the world Leader Schumer is going to accept a 60-vote threshold for a Supreme Court nominee from a president of his party. I don't think he would stand for that, Jay.
So, Jordan, they're looking at really a very difficult, the Democrats looking at a very difficult midterm election, right? I mean,
yes.
Very difficult.
Yes.
We're going to lose the House. And probably a chance they could lose the Senate.
Very good chance. And
so how do they use this to bolster their potential?
It takes news, takes up a lot of news when you have the hearings, takes up, it will likely be a win for President Biden in the sense that he will likely get his nominee through outside some wild circumstances like we were just talking about. But what they forget is that the people who don't like Joe Biden, this will, and his philosophy, the Democrat liberal philosophy, progressive philosophy, this is going to put that progressive philosophy on display. So for all the conservatives out there who can't stand the CRT and this philosophy, whoever he picks out of this group is going to be very liberal. They are. And they're going to put on a display that even sounds more liberal than him. And so I think it actually will fire up conservatives. And the one issue he has, it should be a positive for him, should help stem some bleeding. But as long as you've got $100 get to fill up your car, inflation, COVID, are my kids going to school today because of the teachers? Are there enough teachers? Guess what? The Supreme Court nominee takes really a back seat to those kind of major issues. Ukraine and Russia invading Ukraine, violence, people being killed, sovereign borders, and of course the violence and crime we're seeing in our own country. Plus, he's got to watch out for this. His own party, which has been taken over by the far left. And if this person is a middle of the road kind of nominee and doesn't talk the way they like, they may be the ones trying to take out this nomination, even while the person's already testifying because they don't like the answers.
No, I think that's absolutely true. Hey, folks, we're in the last few days of the month of January here. Help us meet our goal. Go to ACLJ.org. Your online support makes a huge difference. ACLJ.org. Talk to you tomorrow.